All right, so for this first painting assignment, we're going to do a black and white still life, so we don't have to worry about what colors we're mixing other than just light or dark, more white, more black. And you want to set up something in front of you to look at instead of using a picture or a reproduction of other artwork. So you can set up your own still life. You can keep it really simple. You can focus on one object pretty much. You might want to have more light on one side of the object and more shadow on the other. That might make it more interesting. But I'd keep it to not too many things on the table. Keep it kind of simple. I set up the black background, the light objects, and then one grayish object in the front, and then a gray um, tablecloth that the light colored objects are on. I do some drawing first just to get the outlines of the main forms, get the outlines of the objects. They can be kind of rough outlines, but you just want to place them on the paper, get them in the right place, and then get the size the way you want them. You don't have to get too detailed. You can do it as real blocky shapes. And in the drawing, you can actually start to get a little bit of the light and dark in there too. You can do some quick lines. You're going to cover over most of the lines and pencil marks with paint anyway. So if you get a couple marks where you don't want them, it's going to be fine. You can either erase or you can paint right over them, layer the paint over it, over the drawing stage. So this, and when you go to the painting stage, if you want, you won't get in this video. You'll have to drawing go takes forward a little while here to build up, but it didn't really capture it. But I'm laying out on my disposable palette, or I have a plate that I'm putting paint on. When you go to paint, I would lay out some white paint and a little bit of black paint. You don't have to lay out too much. You can always squeeze out more if you need it later. But what you're going to do is water the paint down first. And I would just take your palette knife and mix up a gray, maybe a light gray, more white than black in the mixture. Doesn't have to be exact, but just mix up a neutral gray and use that to divide up the whole picture into areas of light or dark, or tone and the white of the paper. So you're just going to divide the whole picture into sections of areas of either it's gray or it's the white of the paper. And that will simplify everything and get the whole painting going. Then after you do the gray stage and it starts to dry, if you do a watery layer, not that much paint, and if you water the paint down, it will flow across the paper easier, and it will also dry faster, so you can paint right over it when you go to add more light and dark into the picture. If you want to get more towards black or more the dark grays, you can add all that stuff in. You can get more detail, but I would start with the watery paint, the watering down the paint, and having it it'll make it much easier to move across the picture. And also, I use a rag. I dip a rag. I take my well, you'll see it in the video, but I dip a rag into the water, and I use that to wipe the paint across the surface. And I do that to get a lot of the painting laid in, even if it's rough. But I can get pretty far just using the rag and moving the paint around. And it's also good if you have a wet rag handy, ready to go, then you can remove paint if you get a drip or if you get something that you don't want. But you got to have the wet rag handy because the acrylic paint dries pretty quickly. So here, the camera didn't catch it. I didn't have the camera at the right angle, but the plate you see coming into the picture, I just laid out some white and black paint on there, and I'm taking a rag, a wet rag that I've dipped in water, and I'm using that to start getting some paint onto the canvas or onto the paper. Or at least I'll be using the rag to move the paint around on the picture. I guess I am starting with the brush here. But I'm going to do as much as I can with just the one mixture of gray, just to keep it simple. But I'm going to try to just divide up the whole painting into light and dark areas and get things a little more clear as far as where the edges of things are. You can see I'm starting with the background, and then the objects are light colored. The objects are almost white anyway, so I can just paint right up to the edge of the objects with the gray. And I'm using the rag there to wipe the paint into the paper and to fill in areas that didn't get hit with the paint with the brush. This process, I'm showing you this because whatever colors you're using, if you weren't doing a black and white painting, if you were doing a full color painting, uh, it really helps to simplify and start with one color and just divide up the picture into sections where you've got the light and dark already mapped out, and you've got the solid objects against that background color. It's a very quick way to get the whole painting going. So I'm getting to the end of this stage with just the one gray, did as much as I could with the gray. So I'm taking some black paint, or close to black. It's got a little bit of white paint mixed in, and I'm going to get a third value. So you've got the gray and the white going on. Now I'm going to get a dark color or a dark value going in the painting. And I had purposely set up a really dark background. I've got some black paper behind the object, so I could make that almost a solid black, but I'm trying to keep a little variety in there, a range from light to dark. I'm still using the rag to move the paint around and to work it across the paper. So you can pretty quickly get a stage in the painting where you have all the forms where you want them. You see where the light and dark is, and then it comes later it comes to getting all the details that you want into the picture, which for me, that takes a lot longer to get the lighting right and to get the edges sharpened, or just the subtleties. That's a lot harder, but you can pretty quickly get the whole painting the whole composition the way you want it. So I won't do a lot more audio here, but commentary, but you can see how the painting develops. And I've got a shot of the painting at the end.